I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Rick Baptiste. Mr. Baptiste recorded in LA for 40 years, performed on 1,300 motion pictures and 3,000 cartoon shows, including Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, and Family Guy, just to name a few. He spent 17 seasons with Dance with the Stars and 30 years playing first trumpet for the Oscars Awards. Please, it's my pleasure to bring up Mr. Baptiste. Please give him a round.
I can't tell you how honored I am to be here. This is very special. I'm very proud to say that I played my trumpet for 65 years. I loved every minute of it. And before I get into the story, I just want to make one comment. And that is, sitting right here, second row, is a gentleman that for 40 years I sat next to, played over 1,000 movies with him, and is by far the greatest motion picture first trumpet player. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Malcolm Pixar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I remember all of it. We had a great time for many, many years.
Yes, we did. We had a great time. When the Marines played Jurassic Park, I was sitting right next to you. We met Marines. Amazing sound like that. And in fact, if you remember that we re-recorded the Fox logo.
Every time we were there, they made a recording of it.
Yeah, right. I mean, so that was kind of cool. And I told them,
Yeah.
thank you for Incredibles. That was very neat. And the cartoons. But anyway, so I'm going to start off today saying how I actually started and why I started on trumpet. I was born with asthma. When I was 3 years old, I was diagnosed. The doctors, tried to do as much as they could to help me get through my asthma attacks and all that. Anyway, I was in 5th grade. When I was 10 years old, I was running around the track, and my left lung collapsed. And they were able to save half of it. The Dr. Feldman, God bless him, he suggested I take up a wind instrument to build up my lungs. And so I never played. My folks were not musically inclined or anything. And so on Sunday nights, we used to sit and watch Ed Sullivan's show. And this one night, right after the doctor told me I should take up a wind instrument, Harry James was on the Ed Sullivan show. Wow, trumpet. That would be cool. So my folks went to, I grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco area, went to the San Lorenzo Music Center and rented a trumpet, which was, it was a Busher trumpet with a Pardubic Duncan mouthpiece. And it came with 3 free lessons with this gentleman, Juanito Silva. And so I went in and I just feel that, the first lesson, he told me how to get a sound on it, the buzz and all that, and 3, 4 lessons. And I felt that it really came pretty natural. It was something that I enjoyed. And so I decided that, yes, I'm going to continue to play trumpet. And I kept taking lessons from him. After about a year, he said he couldn't teach me anymore. So he sent me to a trumpet teacher in Oakland, Rio Demirs, and that's when I really started to play and understand what it was like to play. He was a great teacher. In fact, I actually found my original first book. It was from 1961, I think. And it says, most of the stuff he did was out of Harmon's, out of St. Jerome. But this one, I forgot that he had started me on Harmon's and taught me transposition, A trumpet. And we went from A trumpet to transposition. And in the book, I keep turning the pages. Okay, now I'm doing different studies in Harmon's, A trumpet. He taught me how to transpose. And then it was C trumpet, and then D trumpet, E flat, E, F trumpet, all. He taught me that. He wanted me to be a symphonic player. And so after, it was about 6-7 months later, he said that a busher trumpet that I had, I need to get a better one.
Here's the microphone.
Yeah.
Right.
Put the microphone up, because that's there.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Oh,
There you go.
yeah.
Yes.
Is that good? Good. Yeah. And so anyway, he picked out a Benj 5X trumpet for me. Sold it to me over payments. I think it was $10 a week. And it was a beautiful Benj 5X. And he took me off to the Parduba Doka mouthpiece and put me on a Bach 3C. And then he just started, and for me, I just wanted to play all the time. I really didn't enjoy practicing that much, but my mom made me practice 2 hours a day. And then in the schools, they had little bands, and so I would play that. But in the Bay Area at that time, there was a lot of different things going on, right? The city right next to it, San Leandro, they had a municipal band that would play in the park every weekend. And I went over there, I auditioned, and they took me in that. And so I started to play a lot. Mr. Silva had a big band, it was called the Latinaires. It was a big band. And I was only 12 years old when he says, Rick, he says, I want you to come and play in my band. And it was me, obviously I was the youngest one in the band. But he says, in order for you to play here, you have to join the musicians union. So I went to local 510 in San Leandro, and I joined the musicians union at 12. I had to get special permission from the Federation to join at 12. And so I have been a member of the musicians union for over 62, 63 years. And I'll talk about that later, but so once I joined the union, I started to work and do rehearsal bands and doing a lot of things in the Bay Area. I was in the original Raider band. San Francisco had the 49ers, and they just started a band. And so some of my trumpet player friends that I met said, Rick, you gotta come over and try out for the San Francisco 49er band. And again, I was 14, I guess, 13, and got into that and played with some amazing trumpet players in San Francisco. Alan Smith, Dwight Red Hall, Pat Houston, a lot of great players. And so I just took everything that came. My trumpet teacher, Mr. Demirs, we did the circus. He got me on that job. We did, and I would just take everything in town. And then finally, I got to high school, put in the band there. But there was one thing that happened when I was 14, and that was that the trumpet player who was in the San Francisco Symphony He was the third trumpet player. His name was Victor Crest. Now, the Providence 4-star K4 was made for Victor, all right? And so, Mr. Demir says they're having auditions to get lessons from Mr. Crest. And so, he told me where to go. I went and auditioned. There was about 12 trumpet players, and I ended up winning the audition to take these lessons. I had 2 months of lessons with Vic Crest. It was amazing. And in the middle of that 2 months, he got ill. And so he would send me to the rehearsal with the San Francisco Symphony, and I would sit in his chair and rehearse with Don Reinberg, the principal trumpet of Frisco at that time, and Chris Bojos. And so I started to do that. I really enjoyed it. I took lessons from the first trumpet player in the Oakland Symphony. His name was Marv Nelson. And I started to sub in the Oakland Symphony and do that. There was the Holy Name Symphony, and so I was playing all those kinds of things. But then my second year in high school, we got a dance band. And so we were playing all this big band music. I started listening to Woody Herman, Count Basie, Snooky Young, and so I realized that the legit stuff was fun, but playing this kind of stuff was really neat. So I had a chance to do that, and I started doing different bands in town, doing a bunch of jobs all over town. So I remember sitting and watching TV with my folks and listening to the Oscars. And I thought, wow, someday I would really love to do that. But I realized, I said, wait a minute, how am I going to get, because I knew that I needed to get more experience and before I would even think to come to Los Angeles. So I was playing in a club. I was 19 years old, playing in a club in San Francisco called Mr. B's. And this is November of 1968. No, actually it was November of 1967. And Bobby Darin came in, and he was the lead act. And he really liked my trumpet playing. I was playing first trumpet in the band. His conductor, Bob Rosario, who I ended up working a lot with, he came to me and says, listen, Bobby is going to be going to Harris, Reno for 2 weeks, and he wants you to come up there as his first trumpet player. I said, wow, that'd be cool, but I'm only, 20 years old. He says, that's right, lie about your age. So I lied about my age, and I went up there with Bobby and worked for 2 weeks. And it was amazing. I had a great time. The band was great. In fact, the guy playing second trumpet in the house band was the great George Reno. So I had a chance to work with Georgie that many years ago. So I did the 2 weeks, and after the 2 weeks, the leader, George Hernandez, came to me and says, I really like your playing. Would you come here and work? And I said, well, yeah, And so he says, we have a new season starting March of 68. Want you to come up here. And so I worked it all out. My folks talked to them. And I started working at Harris, Reno. It was a great job. Like I said, with George, and then Tiki Mills, another great player up in Reno. And started working and just learning and being a better player. And working with all these great musicians. I was always one, because I was always the youngest, I was always one to gravitate to the older players and ask them about their career. And to this day, I understand why I'm very interested in their careers, what they did, how they did it. And so, after about 7 months of working, George Graham was having some cheap teeth trouble. And so I had to move over and play the lead book. And that December, Bill Cosby came in, and his opening act he brought was Dizzy Gillespie. So here I am, 20 years old, 21 years old, getting the chance to work and hang with Dizzy Gillespie. He was amazing. The 2 weeks we worked him, he invited me up to his room, we hung, I talked, had a chance to, got great pictures of me, 21 years old, and his. And the thing that I was very smart about, and I hope everybody here, I'm not a prude, I'm not anything like that, but I never drank. I never liked the way it tastes. I remember my, fathers usually when you're a kid, they give you a little taste of beer. I never liked the taste. And when I tell that to drinkers, they said, well, we don't drink for the taste. So for all these years, I'm 75, I have never in my life been drunk. I have no idea what that feeling is. But I also saw my fellow players and friends who were doing that, and they thought they were playing great, and they thought it sounded great. And I'm standing, I was always the designated driver. And I realized, that's not what I really want to do. And then it came down to marijuana and all that. And I think, in fact, one of the few times that I did it was upstairs in Dizzy Gillespie's room at the hotel. I was up there with George Ram. Dizzy was behind, George Ram was behind. And so Dizzy likes the thing, the joint, right? And George says, wait, Diz, Bahala or whatever this, the main guy up there said. He says, we're not supposed to do that. And Dizzy says, no one's going to tell me not to do my shit. So he passed the joint to me. Now, I'm done. I'm gonna do it because his lips were on this joint. So I went and coughed. Now again, don't forget, I have asthma, right? I took in this and I coughed my ass off, and he laughed for a half hour. Anyway, didn't feel anything from that. I tried it a few other times. Nothing ever made me feel better than I always did feel. So I figured, why do it? I don't need to do any of that stuff. And so it's not like, I said, you do your own thing, whatever, but I'm not going to join you in that kind of stuff. I just wasn't. I would eat, as everybody says. I love to eat, But, so that was Reno. The other cool time was in March of 1970, Roy Rogers and Dale Emmons came in for, I think it was 4 days, to star at Harris Reno. And they brought Rafael Mendez as their conductor. And so Ralph did, conducted there. He played a little bit. I had a chance to hang with him. He's, I was in heaven, needless to say, But Reno, I kind of outgrew it. I loved it, but I realized that I needed to go to a different place because I'm learning, I'm getting better, I'm understanding more how to play the instrument. And so, George Jones, who hired me for Reno, he left and he moved to Vegas. And he got a show at the Thunderbird Hotel called Latin Fire. So he called me, he said, Rick, he says, so I gave my notice to Reno, and I drove down every week, because you had to sign in Vegas when you were transferring. So I drove down from Reno to Vegas every week and signed in and started working in Las Vegas. At that time in the 70s, we're talking about 1971. And it was amazing time. There was 11 hotels that had full house band, 4 trumpet, 4 trombone, 5 saxes, strings, harp, everything. It was an amazing time and amazing musicians. It was great trumpet players there. And so the first gig after I left the Thunderbird Live Fire was I got a job in the house band at the Landmark Hotel. And in my trumpet section, my second trumpet player was Dennis Dotson. And Dennis Dotson was the jazz player on Woody Herman's band, right? Great player. We call him Toad. Anyway, the third trumpet player was Red Rodney, the great Red Rodney. And I would spend hours sitting with Red. You know, he worked with Charlie Parker, everybody, and just hearing the stories from these guys. So I did that job for about 6 months, and then the leader there moved over to the opening of the new MGM Hotel. So I was in that house band for about 6 months. And in Las Vegas, like I said, there's 11 hotels. With, the acts, the musicians, 8 o'clock and 12 o'clock shows. They can only work 6 days a week. Well, the acts had to work 7. So they had a relief band. In Las Vegas, they actually had 2 relief bands. Relief bands. I was with Johnny Haig I was first covered on that I actually replaced Walt Johnson on that job. And so I did that for about 8 years. And in the other relief band, they did about 3 nights a week. The first trumpet player was Charlie Turner. And Charlie Turner was a great trumpet player who played with Frank Sinatra. He actually recorded first trumpet on New York, New York. And Charlie Turner was a very fine player. So there was great players. Sam Noto. There were so many great players in Vegas at that time. Charlie Davis was first trumpet at the Tropicana. Anyway, so my last year in Vegas was in '79, and I felt really comfortable. The Osmonds used to fly me every week up to Utah to play the Don Louis TV show. And so I would do that. So I had a chance to work with headphones, and I just felt really comfortable about playing. And I decided, okay, I'm going to start making some phone calls. Because in Las Vegas, I had a chance to work. Nelson Riddle came in. We had Peter Max came in with Barbara Eden. Don Costa came in. So I had a chance to, at least they knew my name, and they heard me play. And when I finally decided I wanted to come to LA, I brought it up to him, would it be okay if I call you? Blah, blah, blah. So I moved here in November of '79, and the first person I called was Peter Max. And he hooked me up with his contractor, Joe Saldo, and Joe says, perfect timing. He says, our second trumpet player, Jack Laubach, is not going to be able to do this season for Carol Burnett show. So I had a chance to do the last season of the Carol Burnett show sitting next to the brilliant, great Warren Looney, which I will talk about more later. But anyway, I started doing that, and Warren was my hero. He introduced me to Sandy DeCrescent, who was one of the top contractor in town. I started to work more and more, getting opportunities to work with brilliant musicians like Malcolm. And so the thing I always feel, and I tell the young musicians when I speak to them, is that you have to remember, when you show up on a job, you get called on a job, you might not be the first trumpet player, you might not be whatever, but you check your ego at the door. Meaning that if you're not the first trumpet player, I'm going to go in and I'm going to be the best second trumpet player, third trumpet player, fourth trumpet player to that first guy, because if you do that, they'll remember, man, this guy's a new guy came into town, he did a great job, he played great, he was hanging with everybody, and they can get your name out there. I know Malcolm gave my name around. you don't want to piss off the guys you work with all the time. And so I made sure that, tried to make sure that we were all friends, which I think we were. I know when we would work on movies, the trumpet section, most movie calls are 10 o'clock doubles, 10 to 1, 2 to 5, with a lunch break. All the trumpets would go to lunch together. And somebody said, well, why didn't you guys all go together? I said, because if you didn't go, you were the one we were going to talk about. So anyway, we were really close. And like I said, I probably did 1,000 movies with Malcolm. And I would work with the same 4 or 5 guys, Malcolm, Warren, myself. When Tim Morrison came to town, he was there. The great John Lewis. And I don't think we were hired always like that, because we went in and took care of business. It wasn't because we were the best. We worked out great with each other. Malcolm's playing first, a big band church comes out, boom, it's on my stand. He can play it, but he knows I ate that up for breakfast. So you move it over there. And the same thing, if I'm playing lead, and I know that there's a naked solo coming up at the end of the thing, it's on Chewbacca's turn. The important thing was the music, not us, not becoming famous or whatever, no. It was the music and making the composer and the contractor happy. The other thing I always did, and I really suggest this very strongly, is I was always early. I was the first one there. Guys were driving the parking lot. I was there at least 2 hours before the downbeat. Not because, it was because in LA, as you know, traffic sucks. You never know. I left Santa Clarita today at 7:30 in the morning. It took me an hour and a half to get here. You never know. So I always showed up early. But what that does is to the person who's hired you, it shows that you have a great attitude. You're going to be here. Because you could be late once on a studio call. Now granted, there's a lot of musicians there. There's only 3 or 4 trumpets. And you show up late, they can't start the session until you get there. And that costs money. So I never ever wanted to be late. I mean, there's occasions that we saw a guy would show up late a couple times, never saw him again. I don't care how great you were, your work relied on. And so it's very, very important to show up early. It shows to the contractor and the people that hire you that you care about this job. Now, when I talk to the younger musicians, I tell them that, yeah, if you show up early, because most of the calls come through a service called Dateline. And that's how we know what's happening. All right? So let's say Dateline calls you and they say, I got your name, Sandy Preston wants you in this next picture. Are you available next Wednesday to 10 o'clock double, 10 to 1 at MGM Studios? Now, you immediately are going to say, yeah. So I'm going to ask you, what time would you show up for that 10 o'clock session? What? That's good, I like that. I usually hear, some of the younger guys always say, oh, half hour ahead of time. And then what I say is, oh, have you ever worked at the MGM Studios? Do you know where you park? Do you know where your studio is? So I tell them you show up early, the guard at the gate tell you where to park, you park and wait for the other musicians to come in. And then you watch them walking with their instruments and you follow them to the scoring stage. So now you're going to get to the scoring stage. Being there early, they always have donuts and bagels and coffee. Is that you get there and hang around the bagels and have some coffee and talk to the guys. So I tell them, wow, this is my first job. And he said, oh, wow, that's great. And I remember my first job. So you're talking, you're making people see you, talk to you. And so before you even taking your horn out, you form a rapport with the fellow musicians. Then when it's time to, it's about 20 minutes of, the guys start going, sit down in the chair, and that's the first time we sit down. You open up the book, that's the first time we see what we're gonna play. We have no idea. They don't send us music ahead of time. They don't do that. But you sit down, open the book, look, okay, that's where you're gonna figure out how we're gonna play. Most of the trumpet players in Los Angeles always showed up. We all had cases that rolled with at least four instruments in it. B flat, C, flugelhorn, piccolo trumpet, and a cornet. Because you never know. They don't tell you ahead of time, oh, by the way, you're playing flute today, you're playing cornet. No. So you have to be ready and prepared. And great trumpet player, first trumpet in the LA field, Tommy Stevens. Tommy hated working in the studio. Hated it. Now I remember. I mean, and the reason wasn't because he could play anything. But he hated the idea of not knowing what he was going to have to play. And I said to him, I said, Tommy, you could play anything. You're good. No, you don't understand. In the symphony, I know a year at a time what I'm going to be playing. And I said, frankly, that would drive me nuts. If I could play Petrushka in 8 months, I'd be worried about it now. And he said, oh, no. I said, oh, yeah. I said, that's the exciting part. It's going, showing up, not knowing what we have to play, and make music. That's the greatest. So, oh, good. So, actually, when I came to town, the 5th movie I did was with Malcolm on E.T. The 5th movie I did, sat in the last trumpet, did three or four sessions. And I was thrilled. And just started working better and better movies. I played on Rockies 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6, which was Rocky Balboa. Malcolm played on Rocky 1. Won 3 trumpets, right? That was it. Just you.
If there was 4, maybe.
Yeah. And so that was amazing, playing with the different players that we have in Los Angeles. Like I said, most of the times it was Malcolm, Warren, and myself, and John Lewis, Dave Washburn, Gary Grant would show up. Gary and Jerry Hay and Larry Hall would work with Alan Silvestri, did all their stuff. And so everybody had their leaders that they would call, that would call them to work. But great players. I mean, just amazing players, amazing guys. And whenever they would come and work with our section, and we would work there, the hang was great. That's the thing I do miss in not playing, is the hang and the laughs. Now when I used to like do some things that were interesting. Every Scottish holiday, Malcolm would show up in his kilts and his bagpipe, which he could play the shit out of. So I have great pictures of Malcolm playing the bagpipes with Jerry Goldsmith and with George Clinton. All, and it was so funny because we were doing all the Oscar Power movies. In Oscar Power 3, if you remember, they have a character, big guy, who played the bagpipes. And his name was Fat Bastard. Now, all the string players and waited on the session. Mike Myers came to the session, he said, "I'm doing so thrilled to see you here." And we have a new character in the Austin Powers series, and he tells us, yes, this big guy, and he plays the bagpipes, and his name is Fat Bastard, and all the string players says, "Malcolm!" I wasn't going to tell that story, but yeah, we would do fun things like, I forgot, I think it was Mike, I don't remember who called a 7 a.m. session, but we decided that we would show up at the studio wearing pajamas, right?
They were moo-moos.
Oh, well, no, that was the other one.
Oh,
No, this was, you came in with, what is the old style, not PJs, the old style of pajamas. So we wore pajamas through the whole session, you know. And then it was on Halloween, we were doing a movie with Danny Elfman. And Danny Elfman used to have Shirley Walker, great Shirley Walker, do a lot of his conducting and stuff. And so she always wore a hat and a house dress. So on Halloween.
Tennis shoes.
And tennis shoes, that's right. And so it was on Halloween that we decided to dress up for Danny Elfman and Shirley Walker. And so we both wore dresses and tennis shoes and a hat. Anyway, he loved it. But it was just fun to do fun stuff like that. It took a little of the pressure off, and there was a lot of pressure. So that's the movies. And like I said, I'm thrilled to say I worked on 1,300 of them. I'm very proud of the ones. There was a few I got featured on. Bill Conti wrote one for the movie Blood In, Blood Out. And I'm featured in the whole thing, which is cool. On City Slickers, the first scene that they show in the movie is Billy Crystal's running with the Bulls in one Spain, right? And I get to do my fun impression of Rafael Mendez and play that. But there's, you know, I think the thing that I really enjoyed the most was being able to be a versatile type of player. When the movie came out of Three Amigos, Elmer Bernstein did the music. And I've always loved mariachi players. I love the way they played and all that. And so in that movie, I had the first trumpet was Tony Turan, who again couldn't play anything and loved playing mariachi. So Elmer came to us and said, "Hey, you guys play mariachi?" "Yeah, well, this whole movie there's a lot of great mariachi, that's what I want you guys to do it." And he had the music, and they just put mariachi. And Tony and I decided how we're going to phrase it. So it came out great. I talked to some of the mariachi, the great mariachi players, and he said, "You guys did a good job." That was all I thought. But I love playing all the different styles. I think that's versatility is the most important thing as a player. I think, just one more story, I'm not going to talk about you anymore. Anyway, one more story was we were doing, Danny Elfman put a call out for a movie called Summersby. And Warren and I are sitting there, and Malcolm had solos after solo and solos, and they were all stuck. And Warren and I kept saying to ourselves, we're screws here, because we didn't. And everything was lip slurs. And the melody was da-da-da-dee, da-da-da-dee. And he never missed anything. Now, when I first started working with Malcolm, he was playing the 22B, common 22B, right? And then he went to the Shilky E-flat 3-bar, E3L. And so I asked him, I said, "Malcolm, why he says, well, he says, because if I'm going to claim a note, I'd have to miss it by a fourth, you know." And so he played all the Jurassic Park, all those amazing things, 95 of the stuff, 95% of the stuff he played in E flat, huge sound, but transposed the whole new music. He could sight read better, and he's transposing for E flat trumpet. So, really. So next, I want to get into cartoons because I grew up, loved listening to all the cartoons, the Tiny Toons, animated. Well, anyway, in 1990, Steven Spielberg decided he wanted to produce these new cartoons for Warner Brothers. Now, in the 40s and 50s, the first trumpet player at Warner Brothers was Larry Sullivan. And when you hear all those cartoon shows and stuff, that was Larry Sullivan. You on Racing would sit in section and play. And so I just loved the cartoons and the fun stuff. So we started doing Tiny Toons. Then it was Animaniacs, and then Pinky and the Brain, went into Hysteria. All the cartoons, probably about 1,500 cartoons from in those 10 years that we did for Warner Brothers. And then I would do all of the Disney cartoons, Timon and Pumbaa. It was just fun. I love being creative with harmony, doing all those different things and all that I remember learning. And I learned over time. I had Warren on this side, John Rosenberg over here, and we would be able to create these sounds that they did for the cartoons. Got a phone call from Walter Murphy, who in the 70s had a huge hit. It was called Beethoven's Fifth. Remember that? That was Walter Murphy. Walter Murphy is the one who is the writer on all of the Family Guy, American Dad, Cleveland Show. So we get a phone call from Walter, and he says, Rick, we got this new cartoon show. I want you to come over to the studio. Should call me and Alan Kaplan and Dan Higgins, and we did the main title. So on Family Guy that you hear I did all 4 trumpet parts. Alan Kaplan did all 4 trombones. Dan Higgins did all 5 saxophones. And so we recorded it, we did it, and there was this young guy sitting on the couch over there. Found out that was Seth before him. Brilliant. So we started doing that. So started working on a lot of cartoons at Fox. I did, and I think Malcolm, you did it with Danny Elfman, the main title for The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And so we recorded that 30 years ago. I think we're still getting paid for it. Anyway, so Gary Grant, Charlie Davis were the 2 guys, trumpet players who did all the Simpsons shows. But the cartoons were just so much fun. They really were. Because we got to be creative. They allowed us to stretch a little bit. And so all those cartoons, I think the most fun, I'm going to get to that. I played, I did the first 13 Pixar movies. And the Pixar, it was amazing. John Lasseter, the director, he loved us, Malcolm and I, and we did all the movies from Toy Story on and all that. And so we were doing Monsters, Inc. And John Lasseter came back and he said, I want you to meet a friend of mine. And it was the CEO of Pixar, who was Steve Jobs. Right? So Steve came back, he was talking with us, standing with John brought him back to us, and he looks at me and says, I played trumpet in junior high and high school. I said, you're kidding. He says, oh yeah. And so Randy Newman was doing something with the strings, and I gave him my cornet. I said, play a C Spirit. Now, in hindsight, I'm thinking, I'm testing Steve Jobs, who at the time was a zillionaire, right? And he took the horn and he goes, course it sucked. And he gave it back, and he gave it back, he says, you know, I'm kind of glad I don't do this anymore. I with us the rest of the day, asking questions, watching Malcolm and I play. We had a great picture taken. I gave Tony Johnson my camera. Had a great picture of him, the three of us, him holding the cornet. He signed my music, and he put to Rick, an old trumpet player, to Steve Jobs. Needless to say, I have that friend. But yeah, it was amazing. And most of the time when we would do movies, most of the time the stars of the movies would show up. We were doing, I think it was one of the Terminator movies, and Arnold Schwarzenegger showed up. And he was walking around, he actually conducted. I got a picture. I always have a camera. I highly recommend that for everything. I always, with the cell phones, it's easier now, but I had a big camera. And I always took pictures. In fact, Malcolm said on his website, I would take every picture that he has on his website. But anyway, yeah, he would show up, and so he was up there conducting. And I don't believe I did this, but I think it came out a little louder than what I wanted. But he was up there conducting the orchestra, and after he put it down, and he stood and he went, "I'll be back." And I said, "That's okay." Thank God he laughed. I thought he could have been fired for that. But anyway, yeah, and then we were doing Red Dragon, which is the sequel to Silence of the Lambs. And Anthony Hopkins showed up. He was amazing. He showed at every session. In fact, he even brought his mother to the scoring session. And he would come back and talk with us. Insisted on us calling him Tony. This is Sir Anthony Hopkins, right? So at one point, in fact, Malcolm and Phil Tito they had a lecture in a mask. And so they put it on, and Tony was in the middle. I was going to take the picture, right? And he says, "Okay, tell me when you're ready to take the picture." And so, ready? I said, "I'm ready." And just as I did that, he goes, like he was going to bite Malcolm in the neck. So I shook, so the thing came out.
He whispered to me, "I'm having you for lunch."
That's it. But he was amazing. He was, and I asked him, I said, because he said he had two Bosendorfer pianos at home that he played on, right? And so I asked him, I said, what kind of scales did you do to become Hannibal Lecter? And he knew exactly what I was asking. And he says, well, he says, I looked at 50 hours of interviews with mass murderers, and I took away one thing. Now, we're going wading in, and hopefully next time you look at Silence of the Lambs, you'll see this. The whole, he says, the thing I took was, when they talk to you, they never blink. That's how they got that maniacal kind of look, right? And so in that whole movie, when he's on camera, he never blinks. It was amazing. It really was. When we were doing Matrix, Keanu Reeves was in the booth. And so I saw him and I went in. I'm always getting autographs. Anybody around me. I love collecting autographs. I mean, I figure, why not? We're there. Anyway, so I went into him and I said, Keanu, I said, would you mind coming out and maybe saying something to the orchestra? All the orchestra would be thrilled to see that you came to see the session for Matrix. And so he came out and I realized that he's very shy. And so I came out and I said, ladies and gentlemen, the great star of this movie, Keanu Reeves. And they're like, yay! And he went, thank you. And she turned around and walked away. Anyway. But yeah, we've had a lot of the stars that show up, and they appreciate what we do. Oh, the one guy who's the biggest a-hole was Steven Seagal. What a jerk. 7 movies right now, and he's a total, but anyway. So, during this whole time, then, because I did Rocky, 3, Bill Conti got my plan, and Bill, that was his 1984, was his first year of doing the Oscars. He did 19 Oscars, I was there with him. And so he asked me to play the Oscars. I was absolutely thrilled to do my first Oscar because I wanted, that since I was this big, I wanted to play the Oscars. And on the Oscars, it's interesting. The show always airs on Sunday. We start rehearsals on the Sunday before. On that Sunday before, and mind you, everything is live on the Oscars. There's pre-recording now, but for the first 30 years, we didn't pre-record anything. Everything we played live. And so, and we never knew who was going to win. So for each category, we had in front of us on the stand 3 pages. It was A, B, C, D, E of, all the names. And so when we're sitting in the pit and they say, and the winner is, we have 3 seconds to find the music, conductor goes boom, and the orchestra plays. It's amazing, it really is. So we have no idea who's going to win. I mean, and, you kind of think, well, Tom Hanks, so you key your eyes to just maybe between him and him, and that's, it was just amazing for 30 years. The first section I had, it was Graham Young, Tony Truhan, and Bobby Finlay. And so that's the section that we had for, I think, the first 3 or 4, and then Tony couldn't do it anymore, and I recommended Warren to got Warren Mooney in there. And then Graham Young passed away, and I got George Graham, my friend George Graham, to play. So at that time, the section was myself and Warren, George Graham, and Bobby Finlay. And then when George passed away, I was able to get Wayne Bergeron on the job. Wayne, met Wayne when he first came off the cruise ships. He would play on the cruise ship. Very knocked out with his playing. He's a great player, great guy. Fit right in with all the craziness that we do. And so that was pretty much the trumpet section for those 30 years. I always loved playing live. All the award shows were just, I think I did 28 Emmys and 25 Grammys. It was a thrill to be there. And like I said, I always had my camera. So at the Oscars, we're in the pit, and the pit's here. When they received their awards, they're literally right up there. So what I would do is I'd do the play on, put my hood on, grab my camera, go like this, take a couple pictures. So I have pictures that nobody in the world has seen. So I'm actually thinking, I've been thinking for a while. I have probably 180 photos that I took, and I've had signed. Because when you go for rehearse for the Oscars, the auditoriums like this, for the camera people to see where the people are sitting, they put little posters where who's going to be sitting like right there. And so I'd get in the pit and I'd look and see the closest ones to the pit. And then I would go home and make 2 8x10s on the photo I took of the year before or whatever. And then I would bring it. And on the intermission, I hold the picture up, gave it to him, and had him sign it. So I had about 160 of them signed. So the book, it's going to be a coffee table kind of book, and it's called The Best Seat in the House, which it was. It was just amazing. So live TV. There was something to play live. I think everybody here knows what it's like when you see an audience. You want to play the best. You don't want to make a mistake. And so on live TV, we did the first 3 seasons of American Idol. And then they wanted a different band, and so they hired Ricky Minor. And so then we got a call, contractors Bill Hughes, and got a call saying, there's gonna be this new summer replacement show, 6 shows, it's a ballroom dancing show. Now, Lola said, what the hell? So anyway, Harold Wheeler, the great Harold Wheeler, Bill Hughes, they put together a band. I had myself and Warren and Oscar Bashir did the first couple seasons. And so there's this show, Dancer with the Stars. It was, the reason I loved doing that show was because it was totally live on Monday night. And they always took great shots of the band. They featured us a lot. In fact, on the walk down on every show, the star would walk down the stairs, and the last shot was always a me going, bop, 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 right? And I loved that because I knew 200 million people or whatever, 20 million people were watching. But playing that show, we did it for 17 seasons. It was great. Like I said, totally live, and the eye candy was not bad. So, when they decided they wanted to go with a smaller band, as we used to call it, the wedding bands, the guys, I was so thrilled for Harry King, those guys were doing it. And so, this was in 2014 when we didn't do the next. And so I was approached by the president of the Musicians Union, John Acosta. And he says, Rick, I'm going to run again for president. I'd love for you to run for vice president. And I thought, without Dancing with the Stars, I was still working a lot in the studios. But Dancing with the Stars was so much fun. I said, well, maybe I'll give it a shot. And so I ran for vice president of the union in 2015 and got it. And I actually did that gig for 6.5 years. And it was I enjoyed it. I loved some of the things we were able to do. John and I, we ended up selling the old building in Hollywood. Had to go to a new building in Burbank, and all this for our musicians. And the thing that always bothered me in the studios, and even now, my favorite program to watch, listen to in the car, series rating is called Radio Classics.
Yeah.
When they play the old radio shows. Those guys played that live. I mean, amazing. You never hear clowns. Nothing. These guys are amazing. And I thought, nobody knows. We were an unknown commodity. Worked on all these thousands of movies. Nobody knew who they were. I think I had my name on maybe 50 movies, and that was a lot. But in the 80s, I remember going and seeing new movies replayed, and going and sitting in the audience, and watching the crawl at the end, and they had the composer, of course, and had the arranger, they had the contractor, once in a while, featured player, but no. And anyway, and I thought, this is nuts. All these great players, nobody knows who they were, so what can we do about it? And so, but there was always one name on the call that pissed me off. And that was the honey wagon driver. Anybody know what a honey wagon driver is? That's the guy who drives the porta potty to the job. Now, granted, that's important. Is that more important than music? So, in 2020, we had a contract came up for the motion picture. And I made it I said, you know what? When I'm going to bring this up every time we have a meeting, we need to get credit. We would ask in the 80s, the guys would ask, And they said, no, music is the last thing that goes on in the movie before the movie comes out. They already have the crawl done and all that. We don't have time. But I know now, you can hit a button and 300 names go right on. So now they can't use that excuse. So we were taught. And one thing happened was when we were doing the movie Up with Pixar, and the director, Pete Docter, with 75 musicians at Warner Brothers, Michael Giacchino, he came and, he recognized, we were all the same people who did the movies, and he said, ladies and gentlemen, I want you now, when you work on a motion picture, they have a huge screen behind you that they show the scene we're playing on, but we never hear the dialogue ever. We can see the scenes we're going to play on, right? But, so Pete Docter says, ladies and gentlemen, before you play this first cue, I want you to turn around in your chair, put your headphone on, and we're going to put the dialogue in, and you're going to hear while you're watching, what you're going to play to. And so we talked about the scene that he played is about a 3.5-minute song, 3.5 cue. That was the scene when the old man was reminiscing about his wife. And I'll tell you, it was, anyway, so we watched, oh, that was lovely. And so after lunch, we recorded the cues after lunch. Pete got back on the podium and said, now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to put your headphones on, and I want you to see what your music did to my movie. And we did it, and 75 grown men and women cried.
Oh.
This is a story that I stood up and I told to 40 of the top executives at the Motion Pictures Alliance. And I said, this is the reason. Can you imagine going to hear Jaws and not hearing, no. And and so finally, I thank God, they agreed in the 2020 contract, starting in March of next year, that now when you go to see a movie, all the musicians' names are listed on the call. So, talking about Pixar, and Michael Giacchino, I have tons of songs in that movie, and he wrote them as straight mutes, right? And I just didn't. The straight mute was just a little too tinny of a sound. I didn't feel that it was working good with the movie, and I always raise my hands and So anyway. I had an old 1938 Solotone that Manny Klein gave me, and I thought, Solotone would be perfect. It's a beautiful, warm sound. And so I asked Tim Simon, who's the conductor, I said, Tim, could we please do this last cue one more time? And the orchestra, there goes right back. Anyway, so I put the Solotone in, and I played the solo. And the red light went out, and I looked up, and I saw in the booth that Michael Giacchino and Pete Docter, the director, came out of the booth and started working their way through the cellos and everything. And they came on either side of me and gave me a big kiss on the cheek and said, that's the sound that we want. So I felt really good about that. And so, and Michael Giacchino won the Oscars for that. I'm really thrilled. But the one I think of all the for Facebook things like that, that is, and Marine guys, you did an amazing job, is the movie The Incredibles. That was Michael Giacchino's first big movie. They wanted, John Barry actually did a demo on it, and the Pixar didn't like what he did. They knew they wanted something a la James Bond. And so Michael did that. My trumpet section was me on first, Ray Bergeron, Paul Savo, and I'll think of a minute. Anyway, so we played this movie, and when the DVD came out, on the DVD you could go to the thing that says music, right? And so they had cameras there while we were playing. Now one of the cameras came, and stood there and right in front of me. And as you can see, I really know I'm talking. Anyway, I says, oh yeah, this is going to be great, and this and that. And they put Rick back to his first trumpet, right? So when that came out, all over the world on Facebook, I would get these friend requests from young trumpet players, right? The one that just touched my heart was, it was from a young trumpet player in Botswana, Africa. And he said, oh, Mr. Baptist, you're my favorite trumpet player, you played on the Incredibles, would you please be my friend? And I thought, man, that was great. I absolutely love that. Trying to think what else. Is there any questions before we go on? I love questions because it directs me. No?
Yeah. Great.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So you were talking about being creative on cartoons. What specific, can you be even more specific about that?
I mean, I got so into, I had a copper bottom harmony, right? And I got a little anal in that. I realized that if I put it into my horn a certain way, when I played that wah, 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 it would respond better. So what I did was I put a piece of tape on top of the copper, the mute, so I could put it into my horn at the same time. And being creative meaning all the things, all the different sounds, you know, like on cartoons when a character goes like that, whatever they do. But mainly it was the wahs, the plungers, the different kind of creative sounds that you needed to do that I learned and remember hearing the guys in the 40s and 50s doing. So that's what I meant by being creative. It was just so much fun. I mean, we did probably 3 sessions a week on cartoons. Yeah.
Earlier on, you said you were going to say something more about Warren Looney.
Oh, good, thank you, I appreciate that. Warren, in my opinion, was probably the best all-around trumpet player. I mean, there's nothing he could not do. He was, when he was 20 years old, he was, actually he was Al Ernst's only trumpet student. He grew up in New Orleans. Lawrence Welk heard him play down there. He was on the Lawrence Welk show. He was featured on the Lawrence Welk show. And Warren was, he could imitate playing-wise almost anybody. We were doing, I think it was Bird with Clint Eastwood. And Clint came out and he knew that Warren could do impressions, such as Louis Armstrong. And so he came back, stood on the podium, he says, Warren, he says, in this scene, we are trying to recreate Louis Armstrong, and I want you to do your impression of him. And Warren said, what year? Well, the orchestra laughed. But as you all know, the little pops sounded different in different years. And Clint looked at him and says, 1946. Warren said, okay, roll it. Nailed it. It was perfect. I mean, it was amazing. He was featured, John Williams featured him on the movie The River. He played all the solos in that. He played the solos, I forget the name of the movie, with James Horner. And, but yeah, he was the best. The best.
Rick, you remember what his name was? The public offender.
Yeah, the public offender. But yeah, he just, with us, he got along great. But Warren was, like if you called him and said, I'd like to take a lesson, I don't teach. I mean, it wasn't that. He was just Warren. He lived in his house, a little cul-de-sac in Studio City. Cul-de-sac, close is close by. He lived there for 27 years. Nobody knew he played trumpet because he never practiced. They had no idea. You know, they got one of the great trumpet players in the studio lives right there. You know, But yeah, Warren he could do anything. And that's, for me, he was such a great friend. And, now, anyway, I think there we go.
Were you in the session when Tom Cruise came and conducted Mission Impossible 3?
Oh, yeah, that's one of my favorite stories. So, we were doing Mission Impossible. We had done it. Alan Silvestri, I happened to do a few of those sessions. He was the first one to ask to do the music on Mission Impossible. And Brian De Palma was the director, Tough. And I guess he beat Alan up pretty bad. So finally, on the fourth day, Alan got up on the podium and he says, on the back of his score, he wrote a huge dollar sign. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, this is the only reason we're here. The next day came out, was canceled the rest of the sessions with Alan, so he stopped, he lost that job. And so they ended up getting Danny Elfman to do Mission Impossible. So and Danny did a good job. I really think he did. So we're doing the music, and there was one scene, the scene where the train is going through the tunnel and the helicopter is right behind him, right? In that scene, that's the first time you actually hear Lalo's theme. Bum, 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 right? That's the first time. So you hear that scene. So we record that, and Danny said, guys, that was great. Listen, I'd like, why don't you guys come to the booth and listen to it? Now, that was a shock. We never get asked in the booth to listen to what we play. So I figured, oh, cool. I remember Tommy Johnson was there, he was right next to me. And so we walk into the booth. There was about 30 of us at MGM Studios. And Danny's there, and Brian De Palma stands up. He says, Danny, I didn't hear the second part of the theme. Now Danny starts to tap dance. Well, you know, Brian, he says, that second part I just didn't feel, in this cue, I didn't feel that it was really revelative, whatever, you know. And he says, okay, Danny, I understand, but I really wanted to hear the second part of the theme. And Danny says, well, you know, Brian, I'm telling you, I really tried to get it in there. I just didn't feel that would get in there. You know, that's not a theme that a lot of people know. He said, Danny, rewrite it the way I want it. And 30 of us, our jaws went, oh, we couldn't believe it, right? The next, 2 nights later, Wednesday night, we come in, and what he wanted to hear was, bum, 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 da 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 da. Well, that was in the music we did, right? And so we recorded it. I think he was happy with it. Then we took a break, and this is about, the section was at 7 o'clock at night. So we took a break. We thought we were going to move on, and Danny's assistant came out and said, Ricky, Danny wants to talk to you. Okay. So I went in the booth. He says, Rick, he says, I'm asking your permission. He says, I wrote this. Did you look ahead of the music? No, I didn't look. I wrote you a high A that I want you to hold for 12 beats. Would that be okay? Yeah, well, let me take a look at it. You know, of course I'm not. Yeah, you know. And what it was is the scene, like I said, it's that same scene where the helicopter, he's laying on the fast train, and the helicopter blades are going like this. Looks like it's going to cut him in half, right? Anyway, so luckily, he wrote the thing so that it built up pretty good, and there's this high A, and I played for 12 each, you know. But the thing that afterwards, I thought to myself, no one's ever asked me, especially a composer, you know, would it be okay? I mean, I just thought that was very classy on his part, that he asked my permission to write the IA. So, but, yeah, it was, it came out, so that was good, that's all. Questions from over here, anybody? No? Yeah,
Yeah, you mentioned about the doubles, the 10-to-1, when the,
Yeah.
or, is there anything that you do to stay fresh through that 6-hour period, or to come back and, you know, you've got to do it the next day, the same thing?
well, you know, again, we're not playing the full 6 hours. You know, there's a lot of time to, whatever. It's more this than this, you know, and so, yeah, it's like people ask on the Oscars, how do you keep yourself in shape to do the whole thing? The one I always tell you is for 27 years, I did the Jerry Lewis telethon. I just moved to Vegas, 1972, and he came in, and the telethon is 21 and a half hours. It starts Sunday night at 6 o'clock and goes all the way till Monday at 3:30 in the afternoon. And we're playing we're not playing all the time, but you're awake all that time, right? And so it's like in the studios, there was more, we would look ahead to see if we had something coming up. And like I said, we always had more than enough different instruments with us to play. I love I'm a Shilky guy since 1965. I had my B5, and I had a Shilky P7-3. And so I would like not do the E flat. It was just easier because when you have to keep playing stuff over and over, chances of us clamming gets more, And that was the one thing we didn't want to do. We didn't want to clam to start and have to make all those other 70, 80, 90 guys having to re-record the music. And I feel very proud of the fact that they didn't stop a lot for us. It wasn't, but they trusted us. And also, if you, on a motion picture or TV show, if you play another instrument, it's 50% more money. We just brought a lot of instruments. I mean, but also the main reason was that rather than play the same thing, because the more you play it, the more chances are you're going to climb. The guy that was impossible to work for was James Horner. Not a very nice, but amazing talent. But he would rehearse and rehearse without the clicks. The clicks are the things you do with the click, so that this whole orchestra can. We look at the composer and the conductor from the downbeat and from the cutoff, but most of the times you don't look at him. We're just listening to the clicks, follow the music. But he would do it without clicks and try to match the music as strings go up, and we'd have to keep doing over and over and over. And it was not cool. Not cool. But, he did a lot of great movies. And I don't think that he really respected us as much as like Jerry Goldsmith, I don't know what Jerry Malkovich, John Williams. You know when they respect you, they respect the orchestra. And I never felt that respect from Horner. Randy Newman. I think Malk has tapes. Randy has a brilliant sense of humor. And he would just come out because he knew how hard it is to work in the studios and be perfect all the time. So he tried to lighten it up. And he would tell these stories like once he cut us off. He said, yeah, got a phone call last night from John Williams, drunk again.
He said she was a beer drunk.
What?
He said John was a beer drunk.
Oh, beer drunk. But, he would try just to make everybody relax a little bit, And, trying to think if I missed anything that I wanted to talk about. I think that the one thing is, on Academy Awards, that is the one show that is live to the world, okay? So all the other shows, but the Academy Awards is live to the show. So I remember the first year I did, the house director in the phone says, okay, ladies and gentlemen, do a great job. Don't forget, we're going live to 1 billion people. He would say it every year, It's like after a while, okay, I understand. Well, anyway, so there's a movie called Mambo Kings that the great Arturo Sandoval played on, right? And so Bill Cockey called me, he said, Rick, he said, I called Arturo. One of the songs, Beautiful Maria, is nominated for an Oscar, and Arturo's going to be out of town. Would you mind playing his part? I'd be honored, right? And he found out that they hired the great Placido Domingo to sing this song in the Oscars. So I rehearsed a couple times, and we rehearsed, and Placido was great. Every time a beautiful woman, dancer woman, my darling, but anyway, so so when we were getting ready to do the show live, he heard the director say, don't forget, we're going live to 1 billion people. And so he looks at me and says, Rick, is it true we're going live to 1 billion people? And I said, oh, yes, sir, we are. He says, geez, I'm a little nervous. And as soon as he said that, my knees started to go. I'm thinking, I'm not nervous, but this guy is great on plasma. So anyway, I got by with that. And this is the thing that I learned. I think all of us here have experienced nerves, right? And for trumpet players, the worst thing, because what do we get? Dry mouth, the first thing, right? So I always make sure that I have these little Listerine things or whatever, right? Or Tic Tacs. So if you don't have that, this is a trick that I forget who told me, a fellow trumpet player. And so if you start to feel that you're getting a dry mouth, you don't have water anywhere around anything, you take your back teeth and you bite the back end of your tongue or scrape it. And you can feel the juices start up again. That'll at least get you by. He said he learned this from an opera singer. So that'll at least get you by and through. But everybody goes through nerves. There was a big thing the other day. The symphonic guys that take all the baby blockers and blah, blah, blah. Again, everybody has nerves. But I think that as long as you feel comfortable with what you have to play and whatever, like I was up here getting ready to play, and I look down, I see all these amazing players. Yeah, I can feel a little bit of this stuff going, But there is so many different things that we as brass players, and the most, you just want to be able to play your best all the time. And that is, I don't care if I make you happy. I want to make myself happy. Because I held very high standards throughout my whole career that I wanted to play the best I can every time I pick up my horn. And have fun. This is great. What a great life it is that we have, that we can be able to play. I was so impressed that the four gentlemen who got up here, who knew who we were playing in front of. And you guys stood up here, took care of business. It was fantastic. And I'm just very proud of what you did. And bravo. So, how are we doing time-wise?
Hey, Rick,
No.
Red Rodney, you mentioned Red Rodney. He said at one point, he was quoted as saying that drugs were prevalent in the music industry, but was that more in the jazz?
Yes. I mean, we had guys who, would do it. But I think now, yeah, I think now it's not as prevalent. I don't think so. I don't, And, again, I think we are one of the musicians, I think it was Phil Teal said, because they asked him, he says, how can you play so good when you're high? He says, because I practice high. I practice high, yeah.
Do you have any recollections of your time with Harry James?
Yeah, I mean, that for me, again, as I said, 10 years old, that's why I played the trumpet, because I loved what I did. So, had some friends who played with Harry James' band, and one of the guys, they needed a sub. Lynn Beviano, who was playing the first one, he couldn't make it, so they gave Pee Wee Monty, the contractor, they gave my name, and I went in and played for Harry. And for me, it was such a thrill to hear him play. He was so nice to me. I told him my story of, whatever. But yeah, and he had just broke his arm. And so he had to play one hand, And, but it was amazing. And so I was sitting backstage with him at the Hollywood Bowl, and somebody came in and said, Harry, so-and-so died. Damn it. I told them to never stop drinking. So Harry, I mean, he could put it away. He was famous for that. But boy, when I heard him play it every time, it was just amazing. And when he came to that career, I was just thrilled to be able to say I actually played for him. Yeah.
Just wondering if your neighbors know what you've done and who you are.
No, they don't hear me practice, but yeah, in fact, when I was living in Sunland, I lived in Sunland for 30 years. The guy next door was a makeup artist in the studios. In fact, he does all the makeup for the Tombstone, the TV show. And he knew that I was a musician. My license plate is no coda. And the reason I picked that was a bunch of the guys in town had license plates. And there was one guy, Paul Keisha, not Paul. His license plate, why he would do this, I have no idea. He put first trumpet. So one day I was with Snooki, who was that Jack? So anyway, so after that point in time, I decided we got to get personalized license plates, right? And so Alan took Tacit, and I remember the joke was a jazz musician dies, and he goes to hell, and the devil greets him, right? And the devil opens up the door, and it's a huge ballroom. Millions of people dancing, there's a band of all the greatest players. Buddy Rich on drums, and Count Basie, and the trumpet section was Louis Armstrong, and Al Hurt, and Gabriel, and an empty chair. And the devil says, that's what you're going to do for the rest of your time here. And he went up there, and he couldn't be sat down next to Pops, and they played the music, and they go to the bottom of the truck, and go back to the top, and he stood and played it slow, and the guys, oh, that was good. And they went to the bottom to the top, bottom to the top. And finally, he looks over at Pops and says, hey, Pops, when do we take the code out? And Pop says, there's no coda in hell. Meaning, you play the same music all the time. And that's why I love that. I thought that was great. So, any other questions? Yeah.
How do you stay concentrated over such a long time period, like in the Oscar shows or something like?
Great question, because I always try to bring that up. In the studios, there's amazing musicians. I mean, I always felt bad for the last, the violin players, 50 violin players who were all just following what the concertmaster was doing, right? But, I loved listening to all the amazing musicians that we had a chance to play with, right? And so the one thing I think that is most important is concentration. In the studios, when that red light goes on, 100%, 110% concentration. Now, all of us here, when the first time you play a piece of music down, is usually the best you play it. Why? Because you're concentrating. The second time is when you make mistakes. You trip your mind just off, you play wrong notes, you misread it. But concentration is hands down the most important thing. So always be concentrated on the music and what you're doing as a player. So thank you for bringing it up. Yeah. Anybody else? No? Okay. So, I want to thank everybody for being here.